everyone, and a very warm welcome to day 2 of MEF Connects Digital Transformation. It's a hot one. You're joining me from the north of England, and where I am, we're set for 38 degrees centigrade, which I think is a record temperature ever for my hometown up here. But I know for many of you around the world, temperatures of 45, even 50 degrees centigrade are a regular occurrence. But hey, I'm sitting here in the UK. It's a little bit different over here. But a very, very warm welcome. MEF Connects Digital Transformation itself is hotting up, and you reach us on day 2. If you were with us yesterday, fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us. Today, our focus switches more to the area of mobile payments. Plus, we have a couple of other related sessions as well, looking at the areas of NFTs in customer loyalty, for example. So there's plenty to keep your attention today. Now, yesterday was perhaps, I think, since I joined MEF about 20 months ago, the only event or the only day of an event where 3 little letters were not mentioned. RCS, or more to the point, RBM, so Rich Business Messaging, the business version of RCS. That was actually not mentioned at all by any speaker, I think, yesterday, which is a world record for a MEF event, because MEF is absolutely the place to talk about RCS. But I think we have talked a lot about RCS already in our great RCS World event last week, which we're just coming off of. So on to what we have today. We're going to be starting off very soon with Guillermo Escofet from Omdia, who's going to be setting the scene really around direct carrier billing and mobile payments. I'm going to be joined immediately after by Dario Betti, who is MEF's CEO. Dario's had an illustrious career working for mobile operators, indeed as an analyst himself. And we're going to be reviewing some of MEF's own research into the area of mobile payments and consumer behavior. And then the rest of the day unfolds. I hope you enjoy the day. Please feel free to ask any questions in the comment section here within the banner on the right hand side. You can see the tab for questions, and that really is it when it comes to questions. Super easy. So digital transformation. When I joined MEF, I have to admit, I had not really dealt with digital transformation personally in my career much. And it was only after our digital transformation event last year in May that I really realized that so many of our ecosystems within MEF, so MEF, if you're not familiar with the mobile ecosystem, we're a not-for-profit mobile industry trade body. We've been around for over 20 years. And we operate across 6 ecosystems, product lines, if you want to call it. We've got enterprise communications, which is business messaging, mobile IoT. We covered off mobile IoT in great detail yesterday with 7 sessions. We have connectivity, which is wholesale. We have payments, which is really direct carrier billing focused, personal data and identity. And our latest one is content and advertising. What I've really seen, certainly over the past year, since it was brought to my attention at the first digital transformation event last May, is that ultimately all those ecosystems intersect and they actually merge together. So particularly we've noticed, and we're going to be seeing this, I'm sure, in the statistics from so many people today, there's been a huge growth in the number of transactions online as a result, a massive increase in the number of mobile payments. And as a result of that, also, unfortunately, that means fraud. We had a great session yesterday looking at fraud across all of telecoms, and fraud across all of telecoms is worth, unfortunately, $40 billion, which is a lot of money, because we talk a lot within MEF about business to consumer SMS, so application to person SMS, and that globally is worth 30 billion. So fraud in telecoms is worth a third more than that. So there's plenty of work our members are doing to combat fraud, but also plenty of work our members are doing to actually grow the ecosystem as a whole. So it's now time to get day 2 of the digital transformation event underway. Thank you very much for joining us. And please remember also that every single one of these upcoming sessions are recorded. So you'll be able to view these, repeat these, and for colleagues and friends who weren't able to attend live, you can direct them towards our website. The recordings will be up in a few days following the event. So thank you very much. And now let's get started. I'd like to introduce Guillermo to you from Omdia. Guillermo, very warm welcome. Hi.
Hi, James. Thanks for the introduction.
Okay, no problem.
Can you see me and can you see my screen? Can you see my presentation or
not yet?
Okay.
Now we can. Now we can. So Guillermo, thank you very much for joining us. And indeed, I'll be joining you at the Global Carrier Billing Summit later this year in September in Berlin, where I'm sure we're going to be continuing the discussions from today. So I'll let you take it away with your analyst presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, James. Okay, so in this presentation, I will look at the current state of play of the carrier billing market and what its prospects are going forward. I will also look at the potential impact of regulatory changes to App Store billing and at new business models and opportunities. So carrier billing has gone from a market that appeared to be in terminal decline a decade ago to one that has managed to reinvent itself for the new digital age. After its initial heyday during the feature phone era, carrier billing found new avenues, first on desktop websites, followed by app stores, consoles, and most recently set-top boxes. And it's found its most powerful voice via bundling, i.e. packaging of OTT subscription services with the tariffs offered by mobile, fixed broadband, and pay TV operators. However, the more it taps into the mainstream of digital payments, the lower its margins become. Omdia predicts that by 2026, the share of carrier billing revenue pocketed by mobile operators will amount to just 0.6% of their core mobile services revenue. At the same time, other more agile alternative forms of payment, such as digital wallets, are increasingly encroaching on its territory. It also faces perennial commercial and regulatory barriers that constrain how far it can extend into the wider e-commerce space. Yet, for telcos, carrier billing is a fast-growing market, and more to the point, it's of huge strategic importance. It is one of the most powerful assets they have for securing a role in the digital media and services value chain. Carrier billing's biggest strength is ease of use, with authentication automatically handled by the SIM cards found in all connected mobile devices. It is the payment method that is most native to mobile, providing the most seamless user experience, particularly in its most up-to-date guise, direct carrier billing or DCB. The fact that users don't need to key in their payment details delivers far higher conversion rates than credit cards or debit cards and makes it feel more secure. It is also the most universal payment method on phones, available in different guises to most mobile subscribers worldwide. For OTTs, carrier billing is a way of increasing their total addressable market in territories with low financial inclusion. It is also one of the key elements drawing them to carriers as distribution partners. For carriers, the need to differentiate and the need to neutralize OTT rivals by bringing them into their fold are major drivers behind their willingness to enable billing and bundling for OTTs. Carrier billing's biggest weakness is how expensive it is for merchants. The share of revenue demanded by carriers tends to oscillate between 10 to 40%, depending on the carrier or territory in question. Because of this, many of the merchants that do enable carrier billing often bear it as an option of last resort within their payment pages. Also, carriers have typically made very little effort to market carrier billing, in part because other priorities get in the way, but also because they have been scared of scaling up their DCB business without first investing in more robust back-end billing systems. The carrier billing user experience is too often ruined by the clumsy application of spending limits, or in the case of pay-as-you-go mobile subscribers, the unavailability of funds. Properly managing the risk of bad debt or the allocation of credit requires sophisticated systems, so do things like reconciliation and refunds. At the same time, the technical requirements for hooking up to these back-end systems differ from carrier to carrier, so do the commercial terms. Without aggregators to paper over this fragmentation, carrier billing would be a much smaller market. Also, emerging markets where the use case for DCB is strongest are also where the biggest structural barriers to DCB are found. High airtime top-up overheads and unfavorable tax and regulatory regimes often conspire against the business case for DCB in these markets. At first glance, the carrier billing market looks fairly big. At Omdia, we are projecting that its total worth will go from around $58 billion in total transaction revenue in 2021 to just over $81 billion in 2026. That will amount to nearly 40% growth over the next 5 years. Carrier billing's share of consumer spend revenue generated by leading digital media segments such as online video, video gaming, and music is relatively modest, under 12% for games and music, and just over 8% for video, as seen in the bar chart on the right. In the case of app stores, which straddle all three media verticals, the share is more significant. Omdia's definition of carrier billing is broad and not only includes DCB, but also premium SMS, DCB's old and clunky predecessor, and revenue derived from telco OTT bundling. Included in the latter is not just money derived from revenue share deals between carriers and OTTs, similar to plain DCB, but also money derived from resale deals. Deals in which carriers buy subscriptions from OTTs in bulk at a wholesale discount, and then either offer them as free perks to their subscribers, i.e. as in the case of hard bundling, or resell them with perhaps an extended free trial period or discount, i.e. soft bundling. The column charts here show what's left of a carrier billing's global worth when premium SMS revenue is removed. Premium SMS is a declining market, whilst last year it accounted for just over 12% of global carrier billing revenue. In 2026, it should account for less than 4%. The remaining DCB and bundling revenue will grow by 53% over the next 5 years. If bundling revenue is also removed, the market's total worth dips significantly. Bundling revenue amounted to 21% of the market in 2021 and should amount to 24% in 2026. Non-bundling DCB revenue, or plain DCB revenue, had a global worth of nearly $39 billion last year and will also grow by over 50% over the next 5 years to reach just under $59 billion in 2026. Without bundling, carrier billing's share of online video and digital music revenue plummets to just over 1% and just under 4% respectively, as seen in the purple and pink bars in the chart on the right. Whilst the likes of Netflix and Spotify have enabled users to pay via DCB in selected markets, DCB's role is very peripheral. Yet Netflix, Spotify, and other subscription video and music streaming services have been the staples of telco OTT bundling activity over the past decade or so. Something else that is quite striking about the carrier billing market is just how geographically skewed it is towards Asia Pacific, and not just Asia Pacific, but Japan and South Korea specifically. The column charts here are showing Asia Pacific's share of total market value, i.e. DCB, premium SMS, and bundling all rolled into one. And although that share will decrease slightly over the next 5 years, it will still account for 2/3 of the market in 2026. And if you look at the bar chart on the right, which shows the share of media revenue captured by carrier billing outside of Asia Pacific, there are considerable dips in the case of app stores and video games. That's because DCB is the dominant payment method in app stores in Japan and South Korea, and Japan and South Korea are in turn the world's third and fourth top grossing app markets, so they alone account for over 70% of global carrier billed Google Play and Apple App Store revenue. This is how much of the market is concentrated in just Japan and South Korea, essentially half. The bar chart on the right shows how much of a greater role carrier billing plays in digital media payments in those two markets. And if you boil down total carrier billing revenue to the share that carriers get to keep, this is what's left. $5.8 billion globally last year and $6.5 billion in 2026, representing a fall in share of 2 percentage points. As I mentioned earlier, margins are getting tighter in carrier billing. The bar chart on the right shows the overall carrier billing revenue share that operators are getting in each segment. Margins are much tighter in the music and video streaming industry than in the video games industry, so the likes of Netflix and Spotify drive a harder bargain with carrier billing providers, also because most of their carrier billed revenue is derived from bundling, because bundling is often for carriers a loss leader to achieve higher ends, such as reducing churn or boosting ARPU, profit is a lesser consideration. We at Omdia split the carrier billing market into 9 segments, from OS App Stores at the top, which is almost exclusively made up of Google Play and Apple App Store revenue, to microinsurance and e-health at the bottom. The 2 biggest segments are OS App Stores and physical goods and services, although the latter is overwhelmingly made up of revenue derived from Japan and South Korea, the only 2 markets in which DCB has been able to make significant inroads in physical goods. Mobile bundling will be the fastest growing segment of the next 5 years, driven by the 5G rollout and carrier efforts to jazz up their 5G tariffs. As I have just mentioned, OS App Stores make up the biggest chunk of carrier revenue, around 28%, but the regulatory screws are tightening on the segment's 2 main component parts, Google Play and the Apple App Store, which together are projected to transact over $140 billion in app revenue this year. Antitrust authorities in key markets, including the EU, Japan, South Korea, and the US, are pushing to remove all restrictions on third-party billing in both app stores. The most likely scenario is that as early as next year, both will be forced to fully liberalize billing on a more or less global basis, unless, that is, they manage to fight off these regulatory moves with their huge litigation and lobbying muscle. The lifting of billing restrictions will inevitably lead to some App Store revenue migration off-store, and that could have an adverse effect on DCB revenue growth. At the same time, however, new DCB opportunities could open on the app publisher side as billing moves back to browsers. It could also open carrier-billed in-app purchases to carriers who currently find App Store's commercial terms too prohibitive. Off-store billing enablement will, of course, comprise a far more fragmented landscape than its App Store counterpart. With the latter, most of the focus has been on just 2 merchants, Apple and Google, but there are thousands upon thousands of app publishers. There's the possibility, however, that big platforms such as Unity or Amazon might step in to enable aggregated access to off-store in-app billing. These platforms could then become targets for DCB enablement. Most mobile game revenues derive from spur-of-the-moment one-time purchases, and gamers flit from title to title and publisher to publisher. So games are likely to be the app category least vulnerable to off-store billing. There might still, however, be a reawakening in interest in mobile gaming among carrier billing providers, which over the past decade have been more focused on PC and console games, given that mobile gaming user spend on smartphones has been almost exclusively confined to app stores. For app stores, the lowest impact scenario of billing liberalization would be one in which they were allowed to heavily tax off-store payments. But it is highly unlikely that regulators would let them get away with that. That would just leave the option of slashing app store billing fees to make off-store billing less enticing to developers. Omdia believes that this would be Apple's most likely course of action to keep developers loyal to its billing platform and secure long-term app store revenue growth, even if it means heavily denting its app store profits. This is illustrated by the solid blue line in the chart on the right. In this medium impact scenario, overall Apple services revenue would continue growing regardless. Google, by contrast, would be able to get away with not cutting fees at all because of Google's more laissez-faire attitude to App Store billing. Much of Google's non-gaming digital services revenue is already billed off-store. Another factor that makes Apple more exposed to off-store billing migration is China. Access to the all-important Chinese market is the App Store's strongest trump card over Google Play, but with the lifting of billing restrictions, it will be its biggest Achilles heel. That is because most consumer payments in China are now driven by mobile wallets owned by leading digital firms, including the world's top grossing mobile games publisher, Tencent. Omdia calculates that China will account for over a quarter of App Store revenue lost to off-store billing. So what will all this mean for carrier billing? What happens in China will be irrelevant to carrier billing OS App Store segment because Apple has no plans to enable DCB there, and Google Play is not present there anyway. At the same time, Google Play, which currently accounts for about 2/3 of the segment's revenue, should only suffer about 3% off-store revenue migration by 2026, and the fact that it won't need to cut billing fees avoids a potentially tricky situation in which it might end up with little or no margin from DCB transactions, which would erode its commitment to DCB. Apple's fee cuts should not have the same consequences because the low revenue share it imposes on carriers allowing it to retain some margin on DCB transacted revenue. Omdia estimates that in a full App Store billing liberalization scenario, App Store DCB revenue will see 8% erosion by 2026, as shown by the chart on the left. That erosion, which is already factored into our forecast, will amount to a $2.3 billion shortfall from revenue projections in a business-as-usual scenario. The erosion in overall App Store revenue will be a more significant 12%. On the 5G front, bundling continues to be a prominent feature, as shown by the chart on the right, on the top right. Over 65% of 5G tariffs launched between 4Q20 and 3Q21 came bundled with either OTT or carrier own brand digital services, or both. More than 43% of tariffs featured OTT services. A few of these OTT services included any of the new exciting mobile media use cases promised by 5G. Subscription video on demand, the main staple of 4G bundling, accounted for nearly 60% of bundled OTC services, as shown in the bar chart at the bottom. And music subscriptions, which pioneered telco OTT bundling back in the 3G era, made up the second biggest category with a 13% share. Four services for which 5G is transformational did, however, feature in the crop of 5G tariffs, but only marginally. These were AR and VR, cloud gaming, live sports streaming, and esports. Together, they featured in just over 10% of bundled tariffs. 5G is also bringing more diversity to the bundling scene. Ebook, digital newsstand, health and well-being, security, storage, delivery, and couponing services were all bundled with 5G tariffs. Cloud gaming started out with a significantly bigger share of 5G bundling, but that was almost entirely relied on Rovio's early-to-market Hatch service, which shut down at the end of 2020 because of poor take-up. Google Stadia has in the past signaled interest in hooking up with carriers on bundling and DCB. In June 2021, for example, AT&T introduced 6 months free access to Stadia Pro for both mobile and fiber customers. However, the service has also struggled to build momentum, and it wouldn't come as a big surprise if it was eventually scrapped. Certainly, Google seems to be increasingly pivoting its cloud gaming efforts towards B2B. On the video bundling front, tie-ups between carriers and OTT service providers are getting deeper and longer. Tariff bundling deployments in 3Q21 outnumbered simple carrier build add-ons after growing by 38% compared to the number available at the end of 2019, as shown in the column chart on the top right. Not only that, but tariff bundling offers where OTT subscriptions are integrated into the pricing of specific carrier service plans are getting longer, and in a growing number of cases becoming permanent for as long as the user remains on that tariff. The trends towards OTT video integrations with carriers' TV platforms is intensifying. 56% of the live partnerships recorded by Omdia in 3Q21 involved such integrations, after their number grew by 49% between the end of 2019 and 3Q21. And most of these integrations, 74%, involved carrier billing or tariff bundling. That is a big shift from a few years back. Although Netflix is the clear global leader in volume of live carrier partnerships, it no longer leads in new deals. In fact, in the 12 months running from October 2020 and September 2021, it was in 5th place, as shown in the bar chart at the bottom. The leader was Amazon Prime Video, followed by Disney+, HBO, and Discovery+. Amazon is active in carrier bundling on other fronts too, including its book, gaming, music, and Prime delivery services. At the same time, its web services arm is busy collaborating with 5G carriers on its Wavelength initiative to help deliver ultra-low latency applications to mobile devices. Multi-subscription ownership has become the norm among SVOD users. New video streaming service growth is not coming at the expense of existing services. Those consumers are simply signing up to additional ones. At the same time, the Netflix bundling space has become very crowded. Now a look at the new bundling models that are emerging. One of the value chain roles that carriers would like to fulfill is as aggregators of paid OTT services, i.e. bundling several services together and offering users a discounted aggregated price for all of those subscriptions. That could be in the context of several SVOD services or across different media types such as video, music, games, and books. The latter would compete with the mega bundles offered by the likes of Amazon and Apple. Optus in Australia has gone some way to realizing that vision with its SubHub service, offering a 5% discount on the aggregated price of 2 OTT subscriptions and a 10% discount on the aggregated price of 3 or more subscriptions. Similar services have been rolled out by Verizon in the US and Virgin Media O2 in the UK. But not all of these multi-service carrier bundles offer discounts. Many OTTs didn't relish reducing So many OTTs don't relish reducing their wholesale rates for the sake of having their services packaged with those of direct rivals. It is easier to convince them when the services being aggregated are complementary, such as combining Netflix with Spotify. Ultimately, though, all OTTs are prepared to discount services for the purpose of user acquisition. They have big budgets set aside for this kind of thing, and carriers can also subsidize part of the discount based on the return on investment they expect from bundling. On the gaming front, another new development is bundling. Bundling revolves around offering telco subscribers that sign up to specific tariffs either free or exclusive in-game content from popular gaming titles. This is different to the usual premise of telco OTT bundling, which revolves around subscription services. An example of this new approach is Verizon offering $75 worth of either World of Tanks or World of Warships content. Another new model is being piloted by aggregator Fortuno in what it calls bundling light. Under this new service, rather than the usually slow and complex commercial negotiations that take place between OTTs and carriers, OTTs agree to carrier pre-approved standard offers for which bundles can quickly be rolled out. Generally, the discounts or free trial periods are not as generous as with regular bundling, and the main interest is coming from OTTs in non-core bundling areas, i.e. outside video and music. Yet another new bundling model that is emerging is where free access to OTT services is offered to prepaids if every time they top up, they commit to buying a phone plan with those funds. This is a model that is becoming popular in emerging markets, especially in India, where mobile subscribers are predominantly prepaid and carriers want to start behaving more like contract customers. It is an interesting model, but potentially a big threat to carriers' DCB business. That's because in those countries, airtime credit is the main DCB currency, and the new model leaves users with little or no disposable credit. As for new growth opportunities on the physical goods and services front, there are interesting developments in Germany. All 3 German MNOs are registered as payment agents under the new framework established by the EU's Payment Services Directive and operate under a joint slogan. They have rolled out, in partnership with payment service license holder Demoko, DCB payments in areas not previously exploited by carrier billing providers in Europe. The rollouts include electric vehicle charging stations, bike sharing service Nextbike, and Coca-Cola vending machines. Other opportunities that German carriers are looking to exploit include e-scooter and car sharing, ride-hailing, food deliveries, and online insurance. It remains to be seen whether other major European markets will follow Germany's footsteps, or whether Germany's idiosyncrasies, such as its low adoption of digital wallets, make it a one-off. On the digital media front, the next growth area for carrier-billed gaming are subscriptions, including cloud services. This is still a very nascent space, and most of the opportunities that are emerging are via carrier bundling rather than plain DCB. The biggest opportunity currently is Microsoft's overarching gaming subscription service, Xbox Game Pass, which includes access to the beta Xbox cloud gaming service. Microsoft is keen to harness carriers' distribution muscle, and the pass is mostly being bundled as a carrier-billed add-on. Some carriers are also bundling it with the Xbox console or smartphones. For example, UK carrier EE was last year offering a free 12-month Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription to customers who bought a new 5G Samsung phone. Amazon's equivalent of the Xbox Game Pass, Prime Gaming, is being bundled by carriers too. Prime Gaming is also providing access to Amazon's newly launched cloud gaming service, Luna. In 2Q22, there were 29 live carrier bundling partnerships worldwide involving cloud gaming services from 6 providers. These included Air Console, Unstrimp Arcade, Blacknut, Google, Microsoft, and NVIDIA. NVIDIA has been particularly proactive in carrier partnerships via its GeForce Now Alliance program. Meanwhile, the Vortex Cloud Gaming Services connecting to DCB via aggregator PM Connect, and so is Antstream via Fortuno. Microsoft continues to press ahead with its DCB rollout, which now covers its M365 suite of Office applications. Live sports streaming is another growth area. In carrier bundling, some of the most active live sports streaming services are beIN Connect, DAZN, ESPN Plus, NBA League Pass, and Sky Sports. DAZN and NBA League Pass are also involved in DCB rollouts. Beyond gaming and video streaming, the two digital service areas that are heating up on the bundling front are e-publications and health and well-being. Prominent examples of the former include Bookmates, Equal, and Kindle Unlimited, and of the latter, Calm, Fit, and Move. So that's it for me. Thank you for listening.
Guillermo, thank you very much indeed for that. And I have to admit, some of the brands you have very, very recently mentioned are most familiar to me.
Okay.
I've been playing on the Xbox for 20 years, believe it or not. So, since it first came out, I think it was November 2001, right. So almost 21 years. Yeah. So I am a client of theirs, and some of the brands you mentioned will be on show a bit later today. So before we close, one thing, just like to ask you, because obviously you spend your life around this whole sector, talking to stakeholders from around the sector. Mm-hmm. What's the one thing, idealistic, of course, it's idealistic, but if you could wave that magic DCB wand of yours to increase adoption, what one thing would you do globally to increase adoption?
I think it boils down to user experience, because even though I started out by saying that it actually in principle offers the best user experience because it's completely seamless on mobile devices. The way it's implemented, the back end is often very clunky, and you know, I mentioned this also in my sort of first slide. It's you get a clumsy application of sort of spending limits. I've had that experience myself. You know, so basically, I try to enable Apple carrier billing via one of the operators here, and every time Apple tried to withdraw money, or you know, debit my mobile account, it got blocked, and then basically you know, the two organizations that just played ping pong with me, you know, from, you know, so I was sort of like, if, you know, if I spoke to Apple, they say, well, there's a problem with the operator and vice versa. So, you know, and I think that that's one of the reasons why actually operators haven't been fully committed to marketing carrier billing, because it's quite a big investment to put in to sort of make sure the back end is properly robust. And so they're sort of scared of scaling up and not being sort of quite ready.
Perfect.
So I think ultimately it's kind of a boring answer, but it's actually, I think that's
it's not boring, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what area you research in life, that the key thing that any consumer wants, the number one thing they desire, is ultimately for any brand they're interacting with to realize their time is valuable. Yeah, and if we're making experience clunking, taking up their time unnecessarily, then you're going to put them off. So, Guillermo, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your research. Great having you with us. And we'll be back soon with our next session, bringing on Dario Betti, MEF's CEO. Thank you very much all. Bye.